Yeah, so we'll see. Now, obviously, as Foreign Minister, you were all over numerous appointments of this kind over the record period you were Foreign Minister. And you do have a mind, don't you, when you're making those appointments, to appointing people who will be satisfactory not just to the government in those countries, but to the opposition. Any ambassador or representative needs to be able to have good relations with all sides, don't they?
Yes, I mean, ultimately they're going to have good relations with the government. And so if Trump were to be elected, then there'd be a real question mark about the extent to which Kevin Rudd would have access to the Trump administration. That would be a real problem. I mean, if you go back a few years, I think around 4 years, there was a British ambassador in Washington while Trump was the president, who had written dispatches to London critical of Trump. And somebody rather unhelpfully in London leaked these dispatches. And Trump went ballistic about it. And the ambassador, Trump didn't insist he be withdrawn, but the British government came to the conclusion the ambassador would just have to be replaced. So it could come to that, but I think it very much depends on the diplomacy that Kevin Rudd conducts between now and the presidential election. That will be a huge test for him. I mean, he might be able to rehabilitate his relationship with the Trump people. And maybe he's in the process of doing that between now and the election. He must be aware of this problem.
I can imagine, knowing Kevin Rudd, we're going to start seeing pictures of him smoking cigars and playing golf, desperate to try and mend the relationship. Now, talking about... Sorry, go on.
He could get Joe Hockey to help him as the former ambassador there, because Joe Hockey had a good relationship with Trump.
He did it brilliantly. Now, speaking of former foreign ministers, what about Paul Keating? Wang Yi, the Chinese foreign minister, comes to Australia. This is a big step in the repair of that relationship. But he goes off and meets with Paul Keating, obviously, because Keating is such a dissident view on these issues. Argues against the US alliance and AUKUS and promulgates very much a pro-Beijing view of the world.
Well, it's a classic example of lead-footed communist diplomacy. I mean, if China wants to rehabilitate its relationship with Australia, and that's why Wang Yi, the foreign minister, is coming here to our country, then why go and talk to people who are on foreign policy and security issues, total opponents of the government? And Paul Keating has not only disagreed with the government over AUKUS, but he's lashed out personally at Penny Wong as the foreign minister and Albanese as the prime minister. So I think it's a completely inappropriate thing for the Chinese foreign minister to do. It's incredibly tactless. But, you know, this is the country which decided to impose a whole lot of sanctions on Australia and has attacked many other governments and political leaders around the world and has alienated so many people in the process. I mean, one of the reasons AUKUS exists, one of the reasons why the Quad was set up was because of the behaviour of China. And it's this kind of heavy-handed, lead-footed, it's just a mixed metaphor, isn't it? But lead-footed diplomacy, which in the end does China itself a lot of harm. And the Australian government should just ignore it.
I think that works. I think that's complementary metaphors. Heavy hand, lead foot, they're both heavy and they're both working, making the point brilliantly there. Thanks for joining us, Alexander. I appreciate it. Alexander Downer there live from London.